Yes, you read that title correctly. This is going to be the official, unofficial Quincy Carrier, Odell Beckham clickbait video. Yes, yes. You guys have bombarded QnA with questions about the potential of an OBJ trade, and we will talk about the possibility of that, if it's realistic, would it be good, all of that stuff you guys ask questions about, I'm going to answer. So, ladies and gentlemen, here goes to the best and only OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. clickbait video on the internet. And we're going to do it with your questions. And we start with C. Zachary Chad. Would you be mad if the Browns trade OBJ? Hot take. I feel like we're a more cohesive unit without him. Okay. Zachary Chad, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I don't think that having or not having OBJ has any effect on the cohesiveness of this team. And I don't think there's even evidence to support that, especially in Cleveland. What has OBJ done to suggest he's a bad teammate? Like, for everybody who, and it's mainly nationally, it's not local, but for everybody nationally who has jumped to that narrative, what's your proof? Where do you get that from? Why is this out there about Odell this year? Where has he ever been a bad teammate? And where has he been a bad teammate in Cleveland? I don't get that criticism of him. I really don't. And it boggles me, and it does bother me, as much as it would bother me if this were a player on another team just getting a bad rap for no reason. I think you guys have watched me long enough to know that I stand up for guys in those spots a lot. And I just don't understand why Odell, for the life of me, gets tagged as a bad teammate, as if he is disruptive to team chemistry. He's not. He's not. Having Odell on the team has made Jarvis Landry be on track for a career year. It's helped Nick Chubb be on track for a career year. He's on his way to 1,000 yards this year. Jarvis might get 1,300 yards this year. Nick Chubb might get over 1,300 yards this year. I know Odell Beckham's production has not been his career year, but his presence has made things be open for other guys to have career years. I think we have to be open to understanding that Odell Beckham's presence on the field was not always going to be all about Odell in the first year. Next year, it could be. But this year, it wasn't going to be that. The chemistry was not there with Baker. You see with Jarvis Landry, it's taken a while for that chemistry to finally get there with the quarterback. These things take a while. And if you think getting rid of him makes your offense better, I just can't even think to agree with you, because I think that's just false. I think that undersells OBJ, and I think that undersells what his impact has been on the season. Look how much more Jarvis Landry has been able to do compared to last year. He's almost past his last year numbers with like 4 or 5 games left in the season. How can you not see that? Look how much more Nick Chubb has been able to accomplish this year. Yeah, he's had more carries. He's been the starter all the games, but still doing more yards per carry, doing more on average stats, because Nick Chubb has benefited from Odell Beckham being there. These guys are benefiting from him being there. I know he's not leading the league in receptions and yards, but his impact is there. And it's going to get even better if we're patient with it. I don't understand the hype to trade him. It doesn't make sense to me. The next question comes from Andrew Van Meter, and he says, where do you see the Browns in 5 years? How will 2019 look if the team turns it around and goes into a deep playoff run this year? Next year, as always, go Browns. This is an interesting question, because this reminds me of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they went out one year and they signed Malik Jackson from the Denver Broncos. And then I think they drafted another pass rusher. I believe he went to Florida. And that was the year that everybody had jumped onto the Jaguars hype train. And the Jaguars were mediocre that year. I think they were 6-10, 8-8, something. They disappointed that year. And then the next year, they went to the AFC Championship. The Browns disappointed last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a serious contender next year. a lot of the issues with this team come from chemistry, come from inexperience in the position. I think the failures that they've had specifically early in the season have been great teaching moments. The amount of eyeballs this team has had on them all season has taught a great deal of lessons to the young players in the locker room, and I think that they will be better next year because of it. And I don't think a majority of Browns fans are doom and gloom about 2020. I think there are definitely a handful that are, but right now I think the doom and gloom is just about this season not being a playoff season, which is a disappointment, and fans are allowed to be disappointed about that. But as far as the outlook next year, don't let what people think about this year affect too much of what people are going to think next year. I think the fans are optimistic about next year. It's just right now we're not supposed to be thinking about next year. So that is why I think it may seem like people are less optimistic on this team in the long run. But the future is bright for this team. In 5 years, I would hope that this team has either won or made a Super Bowl in 5 years. I think within that time frame, this is the expectation, to win a Super Bowl within the next 5 years. I hope that happens. I really do. I think they have the opportunity to. I think if they get things right, especially if they get that Baker-Odell connection right, there's nothing that can stand in their way. So, they just need to get some things fixed. They got the right pieces. They got the whole puzzle almost set up. They're just missing a few more pieces that they need to get. And, once they get those pieces, I think they have themselves a pretty formidable bunch. And I think that'll show itself next year. Next question comes from the Catster, who says, do you think Kevin Stefanski will be a good head coach hire for the Browns if they move on from Kitchens? I can see it working out. I just don't see the Browns getting rid of Kitchens and then going for another first-year head coach. And I don't know how for that decision I would be. I think most of the issues with Freddie Kitchens have been related to him being a first-year head coach in a situation that had too many eyeballs for a guy to be a first-year head coach and to be a flawed first-year head coach. I don't know why you would bring in another guy to be a first-year head coach in that situation. I think that's playing with fire. I think if you get rid of Freddie Kitchens, you have to replace him with experience, or else you're kind of setting up people for failure and you're wasting your window. The Browns need to win now. So if they don't believe Freddie Kitchens can get this team to the amount of wins they need next year, they decide to fire him in the offseason, then they better get somebody who they know for a fact can reach that level. And I don't think you do that by hiring a first-year head coach again. I don't think that would be smart in my opinion. But good question. This question comes from TSF Zach White, who says, what's your honest Super Bowl prediction? Like in the NFC, I do believe it's going to come down to both the NFC West teams, San Francisco and Seattle. I really don't see anybody getting in the way there. And then I think it's going to come down in the AFC to New England and Baltimore. And I don't see anybody getting in the way there. Now, I do think in a perfect world, the two best teams are the San Francisco 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens, but 49ers offense, I don't know if that offense, specifically Jimmy Garoppolo, is good enough to get a team to the Super Bowl if that defense slips up a little bit. And I do think that the Seahawks are good enough to take advantage of those mistakes if they so arise, which they did when they played the 49ers on national TV. And then if we flip it to the New England Patriots versus the Baltimore Ravens, Baltimore getting home field, if they can maintain that, will be huge because they do play much better at home, minus week 4 against the Browns, wink, wink. But, beating the Patriots twice in a season doesn't happen too often, but this Patriots team was a real bad matchup for that Ravens team. But, it's so hard to predict these things so far out because you don't know who's going into the playoffs, playing what kind of football, because those things can drastically change by the time we get there. But I would probably guess it's going to go down to Seattle versus And I think it's a 50-50 toss-up between New England and Baltimore. I think if Baltimore gets in, they win. And I think if New England gets in, Seattle will win. That is my official pre-playoff prediction of what's going to happen in the Super Bowl. And I do reserve the right to change that. This question comes from Donut Nizzle, who says, do you think the Browns are trying to trade Rashard Higgins before the regular season this year? And what do you think his trade value would be with how much he played in the preseason compared to the regular season? It's the only thing that makes sense to me. See, the Rashard Higgins thing is something that it just is hard to get my head around because he does have such a great reputation to the fans. But I just come to accept that I just don't think that Todd Monken thinks very much of him, or Freddie Kitchens doesn't think that much of him, or John Dorsey doesn't think that much of him. Somebody just doesn't think that much of him. I don't think it was about holding him out for trade bait because let's be honest, we like Rashard Higgins, but I'm not trading for Rashard Higgins if I'm on another team. You know, that's a dude you pick up off waivers. You're not going to get anything more than a supplemental or a conditional 6th or 7th round pick for Rashard Higgins. Like, not trying to be mean or anything. I love Rashard Higgins, but let's be honest about his trade value. There's not there. So I didn't buy that whole narrative that the Browns were holding him out for trade value. What trade value did he have? So I really think that they just didn't think much of him and felt like his playing time would go to better use, finding different ways to put Jarvis Landry on the field, which, I mean, if you've seen the chemistry between Baker and Jarvis, I think it's much better that you have that than you have the chemistry between him and Rashard. So if that had to happen in order for Baker to get better chemistry with Jarvis, I'm fine with it. But, I just don't think that the front office thought much of Rashard Higgins, thought anything about re-signing him, and thought that they could replace him with somebody like Kadero Hodge. And I don't know if they're right or wrong about that, but, the offense has played better recently, and it hasn't been because Rashard Higgins is getting a lot of receptions. So maybe there's something to that, but, it's kind of unfortunate for Rashard because I do think he's a good player, but, I think he'll end up somewhere and he'll land on his feet and he'll continue to play NFL football. Next question comes from Billy Moss. It says, who do you think is going to be the next coach of the Browns? I don't even know if Freddie Kitchens gets fired. To be honest, I definitely do think he has a good chance to keep his job. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's fired. I don't know who you would replace him with. If Matt Nagy got released from the Bears, that is one person that, regardless of what Freddie does, if Matt Nagy becomes available, I would fire Freddie Kitchens and hire Matt Nagy. I think Matt Nagy and Baker Mayfield would be a perfect match. I think that would be a very, very good tandem. I would be willing to give up on Freddie for Matt Nagy. Ron Rivera, though, no, not that doesn't excite me. I get it, but nah, I'm not going to go there with Ron Rivera. Mike McCarthy still doesn't have a job. He seems like the Brian Billick of this generation. So I don't think he's ever going to get another job if the Browns didn't hire him last year and they're not talking about hiring him this year. So, I think ultimately, unless Matt Nagy shakes loose, pretty sure I'm going to stick with Kitchens. Because I don't think there's a better option out there. Because, be honest with me. Do you really want to replace Freddie Kitchens with another first-year head coach? Because if those are the other options, then why do it? You know what I mean? And that's what the options look like they are. It's either Freddie Kitchens or a guy like Kevin Stefanski. And I'm sorry. That would be silly to me. That would be a bad organizational move. That would be something that would keep the Browns in misery if you replace a first-year head coach with another first-year head coach. Now, yeah, if it happened, I'm going to talk myself into it. I'm going to see the bright side of the argument and all that crap. But, just how it sounds to me off the bat, I'm telling you right now, it sounds like it's a dumb idea if you replace Freddie Kitchens with a first-year head coach. Why do that? Why give yourself 2 years of a first-year head coach when you could just had one? But I digress. Next question comes from Doom's Games, and people want to talk about two things this week. Freddie Kitchens being fired and who's going to replace him, and Odell Beckham Jr. and whatever he said to the media. But Doom Games asks, if we lose, there has to be no excuse to not fire Freddie, right? I don't know if they're going to fire Freddie after one game late in the season when your playoff hopes are pretty much like tiny anyways. Like, I think the opportunity to fire Freddie was after Denver. If they would have lost in Buffalo and then lost at home against Pittsburgh, that would be when you would fire Freddie in the middle of the season. At this point, it makes less sense to fire him now or fire him after a bad game than it does to let him finish this thing out, because you're not going to be able to hire anybody decent if you're the team that fired somebody after 13 games. It's not going to look good to anybody trying to get your job, and you're going to end up with another first-year head coach if you do that. And again, third time in this video, do you really think replacing Freddie Kitchens with another first-year head coach is going to do us any good for 2020? I don't. I think that would be a huge step back for the franchise. So at this point, you have to look at the options that are available. Ron Rivera is not it for me. Matt Nagy would be it for me. But anything less than a Matt Nagy, I ain't going for. This question comes from Hanson's Rough Riders, who says, I know you've been on the fence about keeping Freddie. I feel the same way. Should we keep him, let him improve, or go on the coaching carousel again? Again, this hits it right on the head. The coaching carousel has to be worthwhile to go on it, right? Like, right now, the best coaches on the coaching carousel are Mike McCarthy, who it seems like nobody wants to hire, and Ron Rivera. That's not good enough. I am not of the mind that hiring another first-year head coach is going to do anything good for the Browns. We have sat through the growing pains of one first-year head coach. We're going to do it again if we hire another first-year head coach. This team right now, and this team, how it's going to be constructed next year, is going to be too talented and too good to have a first-year head coach at the helm. There's going to be too many eyeballs, again, to have a first-year head coach at the helm. There's going to be too many national TV games, again, to have a first-year head coach at the helm. You can't replace Freddie Kitchens with the first-year head coach. You do more damage than you would do good. I understand that Freddie Kitchens has some competency issues. I understand that Freddie Kitchens has some pretty bad decision-making, but those are things that you would expect for a first-year head coach to get better in. And I would take Freddie Kitchens in his second year over going back and starting with another first-year head coach, because you can't keep throwing first-year head coaches and expect to win with a contending roster. It's not a good idea. If you're going to fire somebody, have somebody experienced in line for the job. I'm all for that. If there's a good head coach available who has a good coaching record and maybe a one or two things got in the way at his last job, I'm fine with that decision. But if it's going to be Robert Saleh or another first-year head coach, I'm not with it. I don't understand it. This next question comes from Kevin Durant's burner account, who says, with OBJ not getting the ball enough and the struggles Baker has had this year, why should Freddie get another year and risk OBJ not wanting to be here? This is a 2-for-1, Freddie Kitchens and OBJ. Look, I think the problems between Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham have to be fixed between Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham. There are a million excuses in the book that can be given for why Baker Mayfield can't get the ball to OBJ. But what both of these players have to understand is that if Baker's not getting the ball to Odell, and if Odell is not getting the ball in the end zone, then that's on both of them to fix and nobody else. We can blame it on Freddie Kitchens. We could blame it on the offensive line. But if those two had better chemistry, all of these things wouldn't matter. If Odell and Baker Mayfield came into the season in sync, all of this crap we're talking about right now would not matter. That's how powerful that connection can be. If Odell and Baker got right, and Jarvis is still there, and Nick Chubb is still there, and Kareem Hunt is still there, there is nothing that can stop this offense. Not an incompetent head coach, not a bad offensive line. There is nothing, because that connection is that important, and it means that. And we can't keep blaming this on Freddie Kitchens or the offensive line, because it's not healthy for the team to blame this on Freddie Kitchens or the offensive line. This is on Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield. I really, really hope that these two players take their lack of production together personal this offseason. I really do. I hope they take it personal. I hope they take it personal to do something about it. I hope they spend weeks together in the offseason and fix whatever it is that's wrong. I hope they do all of that, create that chemistry, because if those two get right with each other, it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable, because if Baker Mayfield is a consistent threat to hit OBJ and these two can have career years together, they're not going to blitz that. They're going to keep as many DBs back as possible. That's going to make Nick Chubb's job easier, Kareem Hunt's job easier, Jarvis Landry's job easier, David Njoku's job easier. All of these guys are going to be living life so easy if those two can get that connection right. Everything else does not matter if those two get it right in the offseason. And I hope for their sake, they take it personal, the lack of production between those two, the amount of drops between those two, and decide that they're going to be the ones to do something about it. Because if those two wait for the organization to make a head coaching change to fix that problem, then those two will never be great together. Because I hate to be the dude getting all locker room on you, but that's not a winning move. You know, waiting for Freddie Kitchens or whatever. At the end of the day, Baker Mayfield has the ball, and he's the one who makes the decision on where he's going to throw the ball. And if he feels comfortable with his chemistry with OBJ, then it ain't going to matter what play Freddie Kitchens calls up, because Baker's going to know where he can hit OBJ in that play and hit him. So those two got to get right. It ain't Freddie Kitchens' fault. It ain't the offensive line's fault. It ain't Jarvis Landry. It ain't nobody's fault but Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham. And those are the two that are in charge and that need to take it personal that there's been no production between those two. Next question comes from Almighty Phil, who says, do you think we can get to the opposing team's quarterback if Vernon gets healthier? I mean, now that Andy's back for the Bengals, our inability to create a pass rush might be a thing that gets us to lose to the Bengals. Yes, this is a serious risk. If the Browns pass rush like they did last week, let me tell you something. Andy Dalton is more dangerous as a passer than Duck. Okay, he's a much more dangerous passer than Duck. He has better weapons available to him than Duck did. So if you can't get the Andy Dalton this week, then you're going to be in for a long week, and it's going to be frustrating. You'll want to pull your hair out because the Bengals are going to put up a bunch of points on the Browns. So yes, Olivier Vernon needs to be healthy, and he needs to get to the quarterback, and he hasn't all season. So I hope he's able to, and so does Sheldon Richardson. This next question comes from Isaac Milson, who says, biggest draft need, offensive tackle or safety? Offensive tackle. That's not even close. This question comes from David Miner, who says, how many wins does Freddie need to keep his job? 8 wins to keep his job. If he gets 8 wins, he's going to keep his job. If he gets 9 wins, he's going to keep his job. If he gets 7 wins, I can see him getting fired. I wouldn't be surprised. 6 wins, I'd be really surprised if he got brought back. But 8 wins, yeah, he's going to keep his job. All right, so that is all the questions that you guys had for today. I hope you guys got all of your Freddie Kitchens and Odell Beckham questions answered, because it seems to be what's on the mind of the people who watch my videos. But again, thank you everybody who submitted those submitted those questions. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to help me make content, and also, give me some football conversation things to talk about. But that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.